Hello, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be able to be with you today. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that for many people is rather new. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen with you. I'm going to show you a number of images. And if the little photo strip on the right-hand side of your screen is in the way, go ahead and minimize it or drag it out of the way. Today, I want to talk about going beyond what most of us have thought about with regard to food. The old idea was you eat an unhealthy food, and that gives you a health problem, like overweight or high cholesterol or diabetes. Fair enough, there's some truth to that, of course, but let's get more sophisticated. Foods allow us to control our hormones. Hormones control everything in your body. And if you know how foods can manipulate your hormones, you have control over an enormous number of things that influence your health. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, what are hormones anyway? What's a hormone? A hormone is like a letter. It comes from one place to another place. A hormone is made in one of your organs. It goes through the bloodstream to another part of your body where it gives information. So, your thyroid gland, for example, to the base of your neck, it makes thyroid hormone that goes to the cells of your body and gives them energy. But sometimes we don't have enough hormones. It's like not getting enough letters in the mail. You don't have the information that you need. The opposite can happen, where you've got too many letters in the mail, too much information, too much in the way of hormones, and that can cause all kinds of problems too. We need to be in balance. And this lecture is all about getting your body into balance. Okay, so hormone number one, let's talk about insulin. You know about insulin. That's the issue in diabetes, right? Well, I want to show you how insulin works, how it goes wrong, and what you can do to get it working again. Okay, this is very, very important because a lot of people, they're concerned about diabetes, but they've heard things that aren't exactly right, like sugar gave me diabetes. No, let's get more sophisticated. See this big purple oval in the middle of your screen? That's a cell. Could be a muscle cell in your body, and it runs on glucose. Glucose is a simple sugar that powers your cells. Problem is, it's got to get into the cell in order to do any good. And the membrane surrounding that muscle cell keeps it out. Glucose can't get through. What do? Well, you have little channels that can be opened up if you have the key. The key is a hormone. It's made in your pancreas, and it's called insulin. That insulin hormone arrives at the surface of your cells, and it opens up little channels to allow the glucose to enter the cell. Are you with me so far? The pancreas makes this hormone, insulin. It goes through the bloodstream to your cells, and it opens up the cell membrane, and now the glucose comes in. That's just great. So what could ever go wrong? Well, here's what could go wrong. Let's say my dinner looked like that. My lunch looked like that. My breakfast looked like that, and I'm eating a lot of fatty foods. Yes, there is a lot of fat in these things. And that fat, the fat in the foods that you eat, builds up inside your cells. So here's our cell. Everything's going great, except what's this? That's fat from cheese. That's fat from mayonnaise. That's fat from beef. That's fat from pork. That's fish fat, chicken fat. Now, doctors hate words like fat. It has only one syllable. That's no good. What are we going to do? We're going to call it intramyocellular lipid, fat inside a muscle cell. When the fat builds up inside your cell, the insulin key doesn't work anymore. The insulin still attaches to the cell, but it doesn't open up the cell membrane. The glucose can't get inside. So what do? Can I get that fat out of my cell? What if I were to take all the animal products out of your diet? What if we were going to start a vegan diet? No meat, no dairy, no eggs. And what if I would go one step further and keep oils low too? Well, if there's no animal products, there's no animal fat. And if I keep oils low, there's not much of any kind of fat. And the fat inside your cell starts to dissipate. It starts to go away. And when that fat goes away, then the insulin key starts working again. And it opens up the channels and the glucose comes back into the cell and everybody's happy again. Okay, so if I had diabetes, that started out as insulin resistance. It started out as fat inside my cells. And I started a plant-based diet without much oil in it. And the fat went away and now my diabetes improved and maybe it even went away. Okay, can it improve? Well, in 2003, the National Institutes of Health gave my research team a grant to test this. We tested a plant-based diet versus a conventional diabetes diet. And a conventional diet, you know what I'm talking about, cut calories to try to lose weight, keep carbohydrates steady, don't eat too much bad fat. That's a conventional diet approach. But the new approach that we were testing was a plant-based diet, meaning it was vegan, no animal products. We kept oils really, really low, so it was not a lot of greasy French fries and oily salad dressings and that kind of thing. And we used low glycemic index foods. Don't get hung up on the technology or terminology here. A high glycemic index food is something like white bread. It causes your blood sugar to rise pretty quickly. That's high glycemic index. Rye bread is more gentle on your blood sugar. It doesn't rise as steeply. Pumpernickel, even more so. So we're just choosing the lower glycemic index foods. It's not low carbohydrate. In fact, there's plenty of healthy carbohydrate in this diet, but it's vegan, it's minimal oil, and the foods that we're choosing are healthy foods. And the test that we use when we're tracking how diabetes is doing is called hemoglobin A1C. You might be familiar with it. It's a sign of blood sugar control. And if you have diabetes, you want it below about 7. Well, our research participants were about 8 or so to start. The red line here is the people on the conventional diet. They improved. They dropped about 0.4 absolute percentage points. That's good. But the vegans, that's the blue line, dropped 3 times more. And that made medical history. And let me put a human face on this. This is Vance. Vance was a policeman, and then he worked in a bank, and he joined our study, and he told us about diabetes in his family. He said he knew all about it. He said to him it meant could lose my vision, could lose a leg. Vance's father was dead by age 30. Vance was 31 when he was diagnosed with diabetes. But he began the plant-based diet, the vegan diet, and he said, this is really simple. And I thought, simple? People think of a vegan diet as being kind of a challenge. No. He said, a typical diabetes diet means you cut calories so you go to bed hungry every day. You have to count carbohydrate grams, and that's kind of tedious. But a vegan diet just meant instead of meat chili, you have the bean chili, or instead of a meat sauce on your spaghetti, you have the tomato sauce, or with the grilled vegetables on the side and a healthy salad. It's not tough. It's easy to do. And over a year, he lost 60 pounds. His doctor stopped his medication. And when we got his hemoglobin A1C result, it had dropped from 9.5 at the beginning of the study to 5.3, which happens to be an absolutely normal lab value. Let me tell you what this really means. When I was in medical school, George Washington University, I was taught, as pretty much every doctor in training was taught, that diabetes is something you're going to live with. It's a one-way street. You got it, you're going to die with it. Wait a minute. Here's a man who had had diabetes for years. In fact, he was not in very good control, but he had done something that got him off his medications and got his A1C so low that it wasn't even the pre-diabetes range. It was in the totally normal range. He could go in any clinic in the world, and no one would ever know he had ever had type 2 diabetes. Don't get me wrong. Diabetes can wait around the corner. There's Velveeta over there. There's chicken wings over there. And if you dip back into those things, your diabetes can come back. But the point is this. Diabetes is a two-way street. If you got it, you can improve it and sometimes get rid of it. Okay, so a healthy diet is grains, vegetables, legumes, that's beans and peas and lentils, and also fruits. Those are the 4 healthy food groups. And if you put them together, That's a healthy diet against diabetes. But we're just getting started. I want to talk now about sex hormones. All right, insulin is the hormone that tracks glucose. Sex hormones like estrogen affect our bodies in so many ways. This is Robin. Robin called me up one day, and I was sitting at my desk, the phone rang, and she said, Dr. Barnard, I need your help. I need painkillers. I can't get out of bed. I said, what is the problem? And she painted a picture for me like this. She said, I'm basically being tortured by menstrual pain about one day every single month. I can't function because of it. The medical term for it is dysmenorrhea, but it basically means menstrual cramps that are fairly common, but for about 1 in 10 women, they are so bad that you really can't function very well about one day every month. So we had heard that foods might affect our hormones in a variety of ways. Now, we heard this not because of research on cramps. We heard this about research on breast cancer. And researchers had wanted to know, how can we reduce the estrogen hormones, because estrogens can drive some cases of breast cancer. Researchers at Tufts University brought in 48 women. They gave them a variety of diets, and they cut the fat. They increased the fiber. And what they found is that if you just cut the fat in their diet alone, that's all you did, estrogens dropped. Estradiol, estrone, free estradiol, and estrone sulfate. These are various kinds of estrogen. They fall. Fiber, if you increase it, that reduces estrogen as well. So when Robin called me up, I found myself thinking, wait a minute, she's got cramps. I'll bet that means she's got a little bit too much estrogen in her blood. That's causing these symptoms to be aggravated. If we can cut the fat from her diet, increase the fiber, maybe her estrogen level will come down and she'll have less pain. So I suggested, let's do this. How about no animal products for the next month? Keep oils really low. Let's see what's happening, see how you do over the next month. And for the next day or so, I'll give you painkillers just for right now. But then let's see if a diet change will hold you for the next month. She called me up and said, this is the most miraculous thing ever. At the end of the next month, she had no pain at all. And the month after that, and the month after that. But if she loosened up her diet a little bit, the pain came back. Okay, so that was convincing. So it's very simple. What I suggested for her to do, no animal products, minimize oils to see if menstrual pain can go away. We ended up deciding to put this to the test in a large group of people. Working with Georgetown University's Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, we brought in women who had menstrual pain. Half of them started the diet I just described. The other half were taking a supplement that was in fact a placebo. And then after 2 cycles, 2 months, they switched. The diet group started the supplement group started the diet. And what we found was striking. We published the results in a journal called Obstetrics and Gynecology. And in a nutshell, the diet works. Pain fell, the intensity of it fell, and also the duration fell, and not just pain, but also the PMS symptoms, like water retention and bloating and moodiness. All of these things got better. And in the course of this study, we had an interesting experience. We asked all of the women not to use birth control pills or any other hormones, because this was a study to see how foods affect hormones. And one of the women in the study said, don't worry about me. I don't use birth control pills. I don't use any contraception at all because I'm not fertile. And she said she and her husband had been evaluated years earlier. She said, it's not him, it's me. I don't ovulate. So she didn't use any kind of hormones, and she thought, all right, no problem. The second month that she was on the low-fat vegan diet, she came into our research center. She said, Dr. Barnard, I've got some bad news and I have some good news. And I said, what is it? She said, the bad news is I'm leaving your study. The good news is I am pregnant. That's right. She gave birth to a healthy baby, and I saw her several years later. She came to one of my lectures. She now had 3 children. She was not infertile. She was out of balance. So let me back up. I know we've talked quite a lot about how foods can affect hormones. Let me see if we can make some sense of this. During a woman's reproductive years, her hormones are a bit of a roller coaster. For the first 2 weeks, as you see on this graph, the amount of estrogen in her blood rises to a peak, and then it suddenly falls. This is when she is ovulating. An ovary is releasing an egg. Then over the next week, the amount of estrogen rises again. And that's because the uterus is the most optimistic organ in the body. Every month, it's convinced we're going to get pregnant for sure. Well, the reason it's doing that is it wants to get the uterus ready for pregnancy. But after that third week or so, the disappointed uterus discovers we are not pregnant after all, and the amount of estrogen falls, and the uterine lining is discarded, and the next month it starts again. But all of this can go up or go down based on what you eat. As I mentioned earlier, high fat foods cause more estrogen to be produced. High fiber foods cause less estrogen to be produced. All right, let me show you what this looks like in your body. This is the uterus in the middle of the picture. And off on the left and the right, you see the ovaries, and they are connected by the fallopian tubes. All right, in the uterus, see that pink lining there? Every month that will enlarge, thicken up, because estrogen says, all right, we might get pregnant this month. Let's thicken up that uterine lining in anticipation of pregnancy. Estrogen drives that change. If you have too much estrogen in your blood, what we believe happens is that lining thickens up too much, and then it starts to produce prostaglandins that really hurt, especially as it breaks apart in menstrual flow. And as Robin was describing her symptoms to me, I thought that's what she's got. She's got too much estrogen, too much thickening, too much prostaglandins, too much pain. All we did was bring in the fiber, get away from the fat with a vegan diet, and the estrogen came down, and that helped her symptoms. Really, really simple, right? Okay, so how can foods really get my hormones into balance? Okay, so we talked about the study results at Tufts, and other studies have shown exactly the same thing. Fiber reduces estrogens, fat increases estrogens. Very simple. All right, you see this red sort of triangular organ at the top? That's your liver. Your liver gets rid of excess estrogen. Did you know that? Your liver takes the estrogen out of the blood and it sends it through that green bile duct into your intestinal tract. And your intestinal tract conducts that unwanted estrogen all along, and then out with the waste it goes, and you're literally flushing unwanted estrogens down the toilet. But here's the thing. If you don't have enough fiber in your diet, that's not going to happen. Let's say you ate fish for lunch, chicken, steak, yogurt, milk. They're not from plants. They don't have any fiber. Animal products don't have fiber. If you don't have fiber in your intestinal tract, the estrogens won't stay there. They end up being reabsorbed back into your bloodstream, and they end up back at the liver. Let me make sure you understand that the liver pulls the unwanted estrogens out. They go into the intestinal tract. If fiber is there, it carries them away. If fiber is not there, you reabsorb them. And most women in North America don't have very much fiber in their diet, or at least not as much as would be really helpful for them. And so they are recycling their hormones minute after minute, hour after hour. Once you start a healthy plant-based diet, the fiber in those foods interrupts that cycling and gets those unwanted hormones out of your body. Pretty good, huh? Okay, I want to make sure you're paying attention. Spam, fiber or no fiber? What do you think? I gotcha. Spam is from an animal. It's not from a plant. Animals don't have fiber, only plants do, so it's got no fiber at all, right? Here's a trash can. There it goes. Okay, KFC, fiber or no fiber? Okay, there's no fiber in the chicken, but there's a little bit of fiber in the carton. If you're going to eat the carton, you might get a little bit of fiber. Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to get rid of that. Away it goes. How about this? There is some processed food that started out as maybe a plant, but it was processed so much it really doesn't look like much of anything anymore. So we're going to get rid of that too. All right, it helps to boost the fiber and it helps to cut the fat. Anything else that I can do? Yeah, there is one other thing, and I want to tell you a story. This is Catherine. Catherine grew up in Louisiana, and she was an Air Force aerospace engineer. And back in 2003, Catherine was sent into Iraq to build military bases. And when you're in a war zone, You're working pretty hard, long hours, and you're eating only what the government provides. You do not gain any weight there. As soon as she was sent home after her tour of duty, though, her friends and family said, "Catherine, what did you miss when you were in Iraq? Let's go out and eat." And you know what she missed? She missed cheese, mac and cheese snacks, all kinds of cheese things. And so she tucked into cheese. In fact, a friend of hers gave her an entire case of mac and cheese dinner. I'm not kidding. 48 mac and cheese dinners, which she ate for 48 days straight. She gained weight. She also developed a syndrome called endometriosis, which is where the cells that line the uterus are now escaping, and they're implanting around the abdomen. They attach to the intestinal tract, to the ovaries, to the fallopian tubes. And it can cause real problems. It can cause pain. It can cause infertility because they can strangle the fallopian tubes and destroy the ovaries. This was her problem. She went to the doctor. Painkillers didn't work. Medicines didn't really help her very much. Hormonal pills didn't work. The doctor said, well, the only other option is a hysterectomy. Just take your uterus out. Well, Catherine was 27. She and her husband were kind of newlyweds, not so sure that they wanted to have a hysterectomy at this point. They hadn't raised their children. But her doctor said, look, in all likelihood, the endometriosis has made you infertile anyway. You got nothing to lose by a hysterectomy except your pain. So somewhat reluctantly, she agreed. But before she could have the hysterectomy, she went to see a nutritionist who gave her effectively the menstrual pain diet that I had prescribed for Robin. Vegan, no animal products, keep oils really low. Catherine did it. She started to feel better, a lot better. And 6 weeks later, the date for her hysterectomy arrived. She went to the emergency room. And even though she felt better, she said, I think I'm going to go through this procedure because I'm already infertile, says what my doctor says, and I've got some pain left. I'm a lot better, but there's still some pain there. I think I need to have this operation. They anesthetized her. And an hour later, she woke up. She was in the recovery room. And the doctor was there, and the doctor explained to her something remarkable had happened. As he had looked inside her in the operating room, through a laparoscope, which you make a little incision in the abdomen, you look inside. He said, your endometriosis is practically gone. And the reason that you had some pain was that you had scarring where it used to be, and you had some adhesions. And I just freed up those adhesions, but I think you're going to be okay now. I don't think you need a hysterectomy. I didn't do the hysterectomy. You still got your uterus. And she discussed the fact she had changed her diet. Doctor wasn't having any of it. He said, foods don't cause this disease. In fact, this can only be a miracle. Well, I want to praise that doctor for not taking out her uterus. But what he missed is the fact that when you increase the fiber and cut the fat, estrogen levels fall. And when estrogen levels fall, there's less pressure for the endometriosis to continue, and it can regress and it can go away. Okay, so she lost a lot of weight. She wasn't infertile. She has 3 healthy kids, and she now teaches other people how to improve their health, how to take back their own health as well. Okay, now I mentioned cheese. Catherine loved cheese. Does cheese have hormones? Yeah, it does. Cheese comes from a cow, and cows are impregnated every year on dairy farms to maximize their milk production. And when they are pregnant, they are milked into the pregnancy. They're milked every year. They give birth, they are milked, but they're also then impregnated fairly soon, and they are milked well into the next pregnancy. Here's why that matters. A cow produces estrogen anyway. The estrogen gets into the milk. But the longer the pregnancy goes on, the more milk gets in, the more estrogen gets into their milk. When you drink a glass of milk or eat a slice of cheese or have a cup of yogurt, you are getting estrogens from the cow. That's right. There is no hormone-free milk. It's all got it. Okay. Now, what about soy? Some people are nervous about soy products. They think, gee, maybe soy could contribute to cancer risk. What they're thinking about is isoflavones like genistein or daidzein. These are isoflavones that are in soy products and they attach to estrogen receptors. And so that made people think, gee, well, it's kind of like estradiol. Maybe it will cause cancer. Well, researchers looked. A meta-analysis of 8 different studies in Asians and Asian Americans showed that a high soy intake was actually associated with reduced risk of breast cancer. Those women who consumed the most soy milk, tofu, that kind of thing, had 29% less breast cancer risk compared to women who were ignoring soy. And women who had had breast cancer in the past, if they were high soy consumers, they had about a 25 or 30% reduction in the likelihood of dying of their cancer. So soy products reduce the risk of getting cancer and reduce the risk of dying of cancer if you had it in the past. Soy products seem to be okay. All right, so we've talked about insulin. We've talked about estrogen. Let's talk about a healthy thyroid. Your thyroid oversees your use of energy. And it's an unassuming organ. You probably didn't even know it was there. It was right on the bottom of your neck there. Okay, how can things go wrong with my thyroid gland? Well, hypothyroidism, hypo means lower. Low levels of thyroid hormone mean that you're going to feel weak. You're going to feel tired. You'll be sensitive to cold. It's like your body is just kind of shutting down. It's not working right. Now, the opposite can happen too. You're hyperthyroid. Hyperthyroidism means you've got too much thyroid hormone in your blood, and that can cause weight loss usually, although sometimes there's some paradoxical weight gain. Your pulse gets rapid, you feel nervous, you feel basically revved up. Neither one is healthy. What's this all about? Okay, let's look at it. This is thyroid hormone, thyroxine, T4. You see those purple big atoms there? That is iodine. And iodine is essential for your thyroid to make this hormone. If it doesn't have iodine, you can't make any. Now, back in 1924, the Morton Company started marketing iodized salt in the blue canisters and the girl in the umbrella. And almost overnight, Americans had plenty of iodine in their diet, and you stopped seeing so much iodine deficiency. Well, today we're modern. We're having sea salt, Himalayan salt, kosher salt. They might not be iodized unless it's written on the label that they are. And that can mean that you might be running low in iodine. What can you do? Well, the dairy industry wants to run in and say, have dairy products because they have iodine in them. And you know, if it's true, there is some iodine in dairy, but you know where it's from? Some of it comes from iodine supplements they gave to the cow, and the rest comes from disinfectants that are used on the cow's udder. A cow's udder gets in mud and feces and caked milk, and it is cleaned up prior to milking, but they use an iodine-containing disinfectant. And after they disinfect the teats on the udder, and then they hook up the milking machine, some of the disinfectant and the things that it was disinfecting go down the tube into your milk. And so you're getting traces of all of that stuff. Not the most appetizing or helpful source, but there's a better source, and that's sea vegetables, seaweed. Yep, seaweed. If you go to a sushi bar, don't order the fish sushi, but have the cucumber roll or the asparagus roll. The nori that it is wrapped in is a healthy seaweed loaded with iodine. Wakame in your miso soup, same story. And arame. Arame, if you haven't met arame, it's a delicate, fine seaweed. And in my book, Your Body in Balance, I have a recipe that I'd love for you to try. You take a cucumber, slice it really super thin, lay it out, fan it out on a plate, and sprinkle on a little bit of lemon juice or seasoned vinegar, a little bit of arame, touch of salt, let it sit, and it becomes the most delicate, clean salad you have ever had. And your thyroid starts cheering for you because suddenly you're giving it what it needs to give you energy. Here's the point. When I was a kid growing up in Fargo, North Dakota, we didn't know about seaweed, but our Japanese friends taught us that there's lots of ways to make it part of your culinary routine, and it's a good thing. Okay, in the United States, the biggest reason for low thyroid or high thyroid is not an absence of iodine. It's thyroid antibodies. What I mean is your white blood cells create antibodies, which are like microscopic torpedoes. They're little protein molecules, and I call them torpedoes because the white blood cells make them. They are trying to attack viruses, bacteria, things that have entered your body. They're looking for things that don't belong there. A cancer cell. Your white blood cells will make antibodies to try to knock them out. In this case, antibodies are being made by your body, and for some reason they are attacking your thyroid gland. Antibodies are stopping your thyroid from being able to make thyroid hormone normally. And so you end up with low thyroid. That's called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. It's a very common autoimmune condition. Autoimmune meaning your immune system is attacking you. The opposite can happen, where your body is making antibodies and now they're attacking the regulatory machinery for your thyroid. So it can't turn off. And you end up hyperthyroid. That's called Graves' disease. So this is really the main problem in the United States, is we've got these antibodies in our blood. Well, could diet have something to do with them? Maybe so. At the Adventist Health Study 2, they brought in more than 65,000 volunteers. The volunteers were health conscious, mostly teetotaling non-smokers, but they varied in diet. There were meat eaters in there. There were vegans in there. There were people who were lacto-ovo vegetarians, pesca vegetarians, and so forth. And they compared their risks of thyroid disease. Here's what they found. If you looked at hypothyroidism, low thyroid, vegans did the best, the lowest prevalence. Who did the worst? Who had the most hypothyroidism? Turned out to be the lacto-ovo vegetarians. They're not eating meat, but they're making up for it with cheese, yogurt, other dairy products. Now, when it comes to hyperthyroidism, the vegans again do the best. Who does the worst? Now it's the omnivores. They're not having not only dairy, but they're having eggs. They're having meat, fish, chicken. What we believe is happening is that the proteins in these foods are triggering the antibody reaction within your body so that your thyroid gets attacked. Now, we need more research on this, but many people are changing their diet now to try to take advantage of it. This is Nancy. Nancy was a 49-year-old accountant. She had been hypothyroid for the past 30 years. She was diagnosed at age 19. She was overweight, tired, sensitive to cold, and she was treated with thyroid hormone, levothyroxine, 125 micrograms a day. And coincidentally, her weight crept up to the same number that her cholesterol crept up to, both 265, not good. Well, she decided to try a plant-based diet, vegan diet, and her weight dropped and dropped and dropped to 150, pretty good. Her cholesterol dropped to 148, that's phenomenal. Her thyroid returned to normal. Her physician stopped her medication, and she got her energy back. She got her life back. And instead of feeling kind of sluggish and out of shape, she decided, I feel so good, I'm going to lace up my sneakers. And that's what she did. And she started to really enjoy life again. Can this be you? Well, don't fire your doctor. Don't cancel your doctor's appointment and don't throw your pills away. Say to your doctor, I want to see what a healthy plant-based diet will do for me. Will you monitor me as I do? Your doctor is going to say, of course, we draw your blood tests all the time. Have a go. And I would encourage you to do that. See how you do. Keep in touch with your physician along the way. Okay, so a healthy diet, fruits, grains, legumes, vegetables. Don't forget vitamin B12. You need that for healthy nerves and healthy blood. Vitamin B12 is something that really everybody needs, but it's made not by animals or plants, it's made by bacteria. And many people really don't get it very much. Meat eaters will get some because the bacteria in a cow's gut will produce it typically. Some of it gets into their meat or their milk. On a vegan diet, you can't count on that source, but really everyone should supplement vitamin B12. The amount you need is about 2.4 micrograms a day. If you go online, you'll see probably the smallest supplement is about 100 micrograms. That's fine, 100, 200, 500. All of those are within range. You probably don't need the huge ones like 5,000 micrograms a day unless your doctor specifically tells you to take it. Okay, so by now you might be thinking, I would love to get my hormones in balance. I'd love to get my insulin working right, my sex hormones working right, my thyroid hormone, and we have barely scratched the surface. There are many other conditions like menopausal hot flashes that we can tackle with food. But how do I make these diet changes? How do I start? Let me share with you how we do it. We've done this with thousands of people in our research studies and in our medical center, Barnard Medical Center here in Washington. And I've never seen anyone unable to do it. Step one, check out the possibilities. What I mean is take a week, take 7 days to check out the possible foods that you might eat if you didn't eat animal products anymore. Take a piece of paper, and the paper should be marked breakfast, lunch, dinner, snack. And you've got a week to check out the possibilities, meaning think about foods that you would eat if you were vegan and write them on the list. What would that be? Well, let's see, for breakfast, I normally have oatmeal with heavy cream on it. I guess I could leave the cream off and put on some cinnamon and raisins. That would work. Blueberry pancakes without the butter, that's vegan, isn't it? I have my bran flakes with cow's milk. I guess I could try almond milk. I guess so. I've never tried it. Well, you've got 7 days. Give it a try. If you like it, write it on your list. On to lunch. And dinner, I can have a veggie pizza with no cheese. Sure. I could have a veggie chili. I could have a bean burrito. There are lots of things for you to try. You got 7 days. Check out the possibilities. If you go out to eat, Italian restaurants have angel hair pasta topped with a vegan arrabbiata sauce. They've got pasta fagioli. They've got beautiful salads and grilled vegetables on the side. Or Latin American, beans and rice, bean burritos, veggie tacos, veggie fajitas, all kinds of great stuff. A Chinese, they've probably got 3 dozen rice dishes, tofu dishes, vegetable dishes, all of which are vegan. Or extra points for Japanese because not only do they have many vegan choices, but they also tend to not overdo it with oil, which is an Achilles heel of a lot of restaurant cuisine, unfortunately. So go there and get your veggie sushi or your edamame or whatever it might be, see what you find. Now, fast food is not the pinnacle of culinary art, but you will find that every place from Taco Bell to Subway has vegan options for you. Check them out. If you like them, put them on your list. All right, so after 7 days, I've checked out the possibilities. I've got a pretty good list. Now, step 2. Now that you've got your list, now that you've checked out the possibilities, step 2 is take 21 days, 3 weeks, and go vegan. Eat those foods. That's easy because, well, first of all, I can do anything for 21 days. But secondly, I've already made my list. In fact, I've got those food. I stocked up. I'm ready. Okay, so for the next 21 days, we're going to eat off our list of healthy foods. For the next 21 days, no animal products at all. Keep oils really low. Be on as close to a perfect diet as humanly possible. And at the end of those 21 days, 2 things will have happened. First, you're healthier. You're losing weight. You're feeling better. If you have diabetes, your blood sugar has fallen. It might have fallen so far that you actually need to reduce your medicines. If you have diabetes and you're on medicines, tell your doctor or caregiver that you're doing this diet because it's powerful. The second thing that happens is, in addition to the physical changes, you're noticing your tastes are changing too. You find that you can live without those meats and things that you thought were essential, and you kind of don't crave them anymore, and you're discovering all kinds of new flavors and new recipes and new websites and new programs of all kinds. In fact, you've discovered a whole lot of new friends who are doing the same kind of diet, wondering where you've been all this time. So let that happen. And don't do it sort of on Tuesday and Friday. Do it every day for 3 weeks, and it will change your life. We have a number of tools that will make your life easier. One is called the 21-Day Vegan Kickstart. It's an app. It's on your iPhone. It's on your Android, and it is free. And it's got menus, recipes, cooking videos in English and in Spanish. We developed it as a patient care tool for our doctors to use, and they do. But a lot of people are not waiting for a doctor to tell them to use it. You can go online to 21-Day Vegan Kickstart, or also just go on your iPhone or your Android, download it, get started. You're going to love it. It's really cool. And this is my book, Your Body in Balance. Let me encourage you to share this with other people, because as I said at the beginning, the old idea does not apply anymore. The old idea was we've got foods that give us disease. That's true, but we need to control things in a more sophisticated way. Part one is all about controlling sex hormones. Everything from improving fertility to dealing with menstrual cramps and tackling menopause. Yes, if you are dealing with hot flashes, run. Do not walk to this hormone controlling program. It is astounding. I'm going to show you how you can knock out your hot flashes. Part two is all about metabolism and mood, erectile dysfunction, diabetes, thyroid disease, skin and hair, moodiness and stress. And then in part three, we're going to talk about what a healthy diet is. I'm going to walk you into that. It is easy to do. But we're also going to go further. There are chemicals in some of the things you're eating that you want to avoid. We'll avoid them too, because some of them can disrupt your hormone activity. Then we'll give you menus and recipes. And I want to tip my hat to Lindsay S. Nixon, who did all of the recipes for Your Body in Balance. And Lindsay did a brilliant job of foods that are delicious, tasty, simple, familiar, quick to make. So anyway, have a look. And let me ask you to not just try this yourself. You know, there are a lot of people watching this program right now, a huge number. But the people who need this information the most are not watching this program at all. They never heard of it. Why? Because they're 12 years old. And they go to school, and at the school, they're told that chicken nuggets are healthy foods, or a big cheese pizza with pepperoni all the top. That's healthy, right? That's what they learn. They're told you have to have milk every day. No one tells them that it has estrogens in it. No one tells them that there are better alternatives. And they grow up, and as they get menstrual pain, they're told, well, that's just a woman's lot in life. And if they develop diabetes, they're told, well, I guess it must just be genetic, isn't it? And when they're having fertility issues and they're told they need testing and they need expensive treatments, they're told, this is God's will. Stop it. We can't change everything, but there's a lot we can change. Once we learn how the system works, once we learn how hormones control our bodies and how foods control our hormones, we have power. So let me ask you to learn about this yourself, but more important than that, let me ask you to connect with other people and share what you have learned. They need this information, and you've got it. So let's make some noise. And when I say make noise, I mean social media. I mean Facebook and Instagram and every other way, and share this information with other people. Share websites, share recipes, share the knowledge, share food, share a meal. Let's do this together. Let's change the world. I want to say a huge thank you to the organizers of this important program, but most importantly, I want to thank you. You're a participant in this program, and you've spent some time with me today. I'm grateful to you, and let me encourage you to share what you've learned with those you love. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much for that. Incredibly needed, enlightening for all of us. And if it's okay with you, we'll jump into our Q&A session.
Yes, please.
Great, wonderful. So want to make sure everybody knows what we're doing is we're not able to take questions from our chat box. However, what we're doing is asking people to go ahead and use their Zoom tools at the bottom of their Zoom page. You can click on the reactions tab. And when you do that, you'll actually see a thing that says raise hand. You click that. We'll answer all the questions as they come in order. I'm already starting to see some raised hands come in for you, doctor. So that's great. And once we call your name, please go ahead and unmute yourself. We also ask everyone to keep their questions direct and brief, and we'll try to get as many as we can in with Dr. Barnard. So thank you. And I see our first one is coming in now from, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Is it Yaron or Yaron? Please go ahead and unmute yourself. And what's your question?
Yes. So first of all, thank you very much, Dr. Barnard, for the amazing presentation. I have two quick questions. One, you said low oil. And can you please elaborate a little bit about what do you mean low oil? Do you mean low material that have, or low food that have oil like avocado and nuts, or do you mean just liquid oil? And my second question is, what is your thinking about sugar? Because I've heard many people that say that also sugar is bad for you. What is your thought about sugar? And if you can also explain if you differ between sugar that come from natural things like fruit or added sugar to a food.
Those are two great questions. Thank you for asking them. Regarding oil, your body does need traces of oils, but those are the oils that are small traces in fruits and in vegetables and in beans. Now, you wouldn't think that there's any oil in there, but if you sent a sprig of broccoli or spinach or cauliflower to a lab, they would tell you it's maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% oil. And those are the natural oils that you need. Where we get into trouble is in two ways. We are either extracting oils. You take an olive, and instead of eating the olive, you take 10,000 olives and throw away all the pulp and all the fiber, and you eat just the olive oil that's concentrated. And that can give you more oil than nature intended. Now, let me be clear. It's a whole lot better than butter or chicken fat. If you're eating chicken fat, animal fats in general, they have so much saturated fat. That's the one that raises cholesterol, and that's not good. But chicken fat's about 30% saturated fat. Olive oil is much lower. It's about 14%. So that's why olive oil is better than chicken fat. But it's still more than zero. So if I'm eating the olive instead, and I'm not overdoing it on olive oil, I would get much less saturated fat. That's better for my heart. And that also will, remember my diagram of the cell, I won't be getting all that oil into the cell causing diabetes. It won't be driving up estrogen levels and causing all these problems. So you want to avoid added oils and also be careful about oily foods. Nature packed a fair amount of oil in a nut and put that nut inside a very tough shell and kind of put them around in nature in sort of hard to find places. But there are companies that find all kinds of them, take them off, take the shells off and put them in a pack for us to eat. And you're now suddenly getting a huge amount, much more than you had intended. And that can cause problems. So we want to limit those kinds of things. With regard to sugar, there are natural sugars in fruits. They're fine. Where sugar is not such a good thing is when it is a concentrated sugar like table sugar. Even so, it's not poison, but you want to limit the amount of sugar as well.
Great, thank you, doctor. And up next we have, and again, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I'm not sure if it's Treva or Treva, but you're up next if you go ahead and unmute yourself. And there we go.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Barnard. I've been following you for a while now, and I appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
My question is this. So I've been plant-based for a few years now, maybe 5 or 6 years. And my menstrual cycle before then was very not regular. And then once I started eating a lot healthier, my cycle went away. And we're talking about early 40s. I'm now 50. So no more menstrual cycle in the 40s. So my question is, should I be concerned? I didn't have any menopausal symptoms, premenopausal, but I no longer have a cycle.
Okay. Well, first of all, anything that I'm describing, you can put it in the context of consultations with your own caregiver, because you can consult with your doctor or other caregiver to see if there's something else going on. But at your age now, at 50, it's totally and completely normal to have no cycle anymore. That's menopause. But what you're saying is, well, it occurred kind of early for me. And it can happen early. There are lots of women whose cycles come to a stop somewhere in their 40s, sometimes a little bit later than that. But if your doctor has not found any abnormality or anything like that, then it's perfectly fine, perfectly normal. And the end of a cycle is a normal thing. So you'll definitely want to consult with your doctor to see if there's anything else going on, but it is normal to have that change.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, doctor. Up next, we have Liesl. Liesl, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself. We're looking forward to your question as well.
Hi, Dr. Barnard. It is such an honor, and I must say you've got such a calming, peaceful voice. It's just so amazing to listen to.
Oh, thank you. That's kind of you.
Yeah. So my question is on thyroid. I've had high antibodies for a very long time. I've been vegan for almost 2 years, but I've still got high antibodies. The rest is fine. And then the next thing would be, I had my Mirena removed about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So hormone balancing wise, how long would it take?
I'm sorry. There was a little bit of a breakup on as you're asking your question. You said that you have thyroid antibodies that have persisted, and you said one other thing, which I didn't hear.
I had the Mirena and I had it removed.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Quite reasonable to have that removed. Regarding the antibodies, thyroid antibodies, we're unfortunately still at the beginning of this science. And the findings that I mentioned earlier from the Adventist health studies suggested that people who avoid animal products are the least likely to have these autoimmune antibody-related thyroid problems. And a number of people, like the case that I described, have shown that when they get away from animal products, they do a lot better. You've done that, but you've still got some antibodies. The question that is going to arise is, could this autoimmune condition, hypothyroidism, by the way, are you hypo or hyper? You're low thyroid, right?
I'm neither. My T3 is fine, my T4 is fine, everything is fine, everything's in the norm. It's just the antibodies that are high, and they're still high. And maybe I don't know, will it get better over time?
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, that puts a different complexion on things. Were you ever hypothyroid?
No, never.
Then why was your doctor checking your antibodies?
I just, when I check my thyroid, I check everything. I just have them check all four.
So you never had a thyroid problem. You just have this quirky lab value.
Yeah.
Wild. Okay. All right. Let me speculate with, first of all, I'm glad, it sounds like you're well. Great. You're taking good care of yourself and you're being extra cautious. Good on you. That's fantastic. And I'm going to speculate with you for just a minute. You can talk with your doctor to see if there's some other explanation, but here's what we think is probably happening, is that for some people, past dietary exposures will cause continuing presence of some antibodies that just continue. That's one possibility, even if the food is gone. It's sort of like if you had measles when you were a kid, you can still make antibodies to it now. The other possibility is that certain other foods, as food exposures, that for most people are okay, might be causing antibodies in you. What I mean is, let's say you're allergic to strawberries. There's nothing wrong with strawberries, but if you're allergic, they're going to cause a reaction for you that might be very mild. So the question is, could some other food be doing that? Now, no doctor, I wouldn't think, is going to suggest any kind of treatment if your thyroid is in the healthy range just based on the presence of the antibodies. You can certainly talk to your doctor about it to see if there's anything you need to be concerned about. But from what you've told me so far, it sounds like you're doing great. So thank you for that very sophisticated question.
Doctor, thank you. And
sure.
Up next, we have Julie. Julie, if you would go ahead and unmute yourself. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Doctor, thank you so much for your enthusiasm.
Sure. Well, thank you. Thanks for being part of the program.
This is grand. I was associated with the Adventist people for a while to learn vegetarianism. But my question is about cooked. I have two questions. One is the cooked versus raw percentage, because many people like more cooked than raw. And I think that you may have an answer to that. What would be a proper percentage?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, what have you found? Have you been having more raw foods in your diet? And if so,
well, I just usually do 50%.
And which foods are they? The raw foods that you're bringing in?
Just whatever's available. I do local. So whatever, whether it's fruits or vegetables or avocados. I'm in Southern Florida, so we get a lot of avocados and oranges and grapefruits and citrus fruits, and not as many nuts, but a lot of lettuce, a lot of greens. I grow moringa. I have a lot of edible greens that I get from Echo Global Farm, which is they're like K-Tuck and Chaya and a few other things like that I use.
Okay, well, you're doing great. The question you've asked is one that we don't know exactly the answer to, but a few general principles might apply. Number one, as a species, we didn't evolve with sterno. So in other words, we weren't cooking all the time. We evolved with raw foods. Cooking came much, much later. Now, cooking did some good things. It gave us beans and it gave us grains, which if you don't cook them, you're not going to really eat them unless you say sprout beans or something like that. It made a lot of vegetables accessible to us, and it allowed us to greatly expand the range of foods we could eat. That allowed human beings to expand the territory that they could occupy. So suddenly they could start migrating to all kinds of places. And that then put them in touch with foods that people had never eaten before. And once people wandered over the Bering Strait into North America, and then they started coming down through Canada, United States, and then down into South America, they started having foods that they'd never had before, like tomatoes and peanuts and chocolate and all kinds of potatoes, all these things that you didn't have in Africa where our sojourn began. So that raises the question. Let's say I want to eat more raw foods. Which foods are they? I am going to guess that tomatoes and things like peanuts might not be the ones that are most natural for people. Doesn't mean they're unhealthy, but they're just not part of humans' early existence. And what are the foods that would be most natural for us? I'm going to speculate that it would be the foods that were growing in Eastern Africa when human beings sort of began their time on Earth, so to speak. So we don't really know exactly what they are. But what you're going to discover is the more raw foods you eat, the more power you have against excess weight. Generally speaking, a raw diet is a really good thing. And if you kind of 50-50 it, that means you're not going to go hungry. You'll be able to take advantage of more cooked food when you want it. But with regard to which foods are the best foods to include in a raw diet, there we don't exactly know. Human beings had to find their way to China before they were having oranges, probably. So we do speculate that certain foods are probably better than others, but my guess is the only way to really tell is to see which ones agree with you the most. And by agree with you, I mean digestively and also mentally. If you feel okay with them and your digestion is good with them, that's a sign that chances are you're going to probably be all right with them in other ways too. So that's not a very complete answer to your question, but that's a great question.
Doctor, thank you. And up next, we have Joel. Joel, if you go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Joel.
Hello, doctor. Thank you. I've followed you for many years, being a teacher and advocate for holistic health for 32 years. But I have a personal issue. I'm almost 75 years old, and I've tested low testosterone, and presently my nipples hurt. They're very tender and they hurt. And I'm told that that's an indication of low testosterone. Now, I don't have any teeth except for these false teeth, and I don't masticate. So much of my diet is raw, extracted fruit and vegetable juices, as well as smoothies with fiber. So my symphony is clearly out of balance, my endocrine symphony, that is. And where would you suggest I look to help myself?
Okay, great question. Would I be right in assuming that your weight is in the normal range?
I'm 145, 5'10". I've been sitting in a wheelchair for 5 years, and I'm maintaining that weight for all this time.
Okay. Well, first of all, congratulations on all the things that you've done well. You've been following a pretty healthy diet. You've been maintaining good overall health. But you're wondering if your testosterone might be in the lower range because your nipples are hurting. Your weight is good. Sounds like that BMI is probably around 21, something like that. So you're,
yes.
you're doing, frankly, you're probably doing better than your doctor. The reason I ask about your weight is that one of the most common reasons why testosterone runs low is that when people gain weight as a result of eating cheese and the usual things that Americans eat, their fat cells start to take their testosterone and convert it to estrogen. Fat cells do that. It's a funny thing. They're active factories. So the testosterone goes in, it's converted to estrogen, the estrogen goes out. So they got low T and they got high estrogen, and then they start to get nipple symptoms. They get gynecomastia and so forth. That probably isn't you. So that being the case, I think that it would be a useful idea, if you have not done so already, talk with your doctor about, is there any other etiology to this, or is this just something that happens? Some men do get sore nipples. Sometimes it's unilateral, sometimes it's both. It's in and of itself, it's not worrisome, but you're wanting to know if there's something else going on. The one caution that I would have is that testosterone is something that can change over time. and very often does drop a little bit, particularly as men get into their 60s and 70s and 80s. It's not an unusual thing for it to drop, but doctors have been pushed to sell testosterone supplements to patients who may not really need them. And so I think it's a useful thing for you to talk to your doctor, look at the diagnostic process carefully, but I would really ask for a second opinion before taking any testosterone to try to increase it, because the concerns are hormone-related problems, like, for example, prostate cancer. Jury's not back. We don't really know if supplementing testosterone is going to increase the risk of prostate cancer, but the evidence for it is sufficient that a lot of doctors like me are extremely cautious about that and are not going to thyroid supplements, even for people where they're kind of borderline low. So that's what I'd recommend for you, is to talk with your doctor and see if there's something else, some other stone that has not been turned yet.
Dr. Fantastic. Thank you very much. We've got a few more questions.
Sure.
Up next, and forgive me again, I'm not sure if I'll be pronouncing this, it's Tak or Nak. If you would go ahead and unmute yourself. We'd love to hear your question for Dr. Barnard as well.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doctor, for being here with us now. I have two questions. The first one is there any link between the omnivorous diet and premature puberty among children? And my second question is how high are the chances of someone who is on a vegan diet that is whole food centered, like grains, beans, vegetables, low oil, to suffer from protein deficiency? Thank you so much.
Whoa, those are great questions that you've asked. Thank you so much. The first thing is, yes, there is almost certainly a link between diet and premature puberty. And scientists, epidemiologists, have been observing this for many years now. Back in the 1800s, researchers started tracking the average age of puberty in girls, which they typically would track as how old are you when you first got your first menstrual period. And they also look at in boys, they look at secondary sex characteristics in boys. And in both girls and boys, the age of puberty is dropping. And it's amazing, in fact, to look back in time. In the late 1800s, many girls didn't reach menarche, reproductive fertility, until they were around 18. And today, think, what are you talking about? It's 12 or 11. If you think about this, though, is a woman ready to have a child at 12? Physically, she could get pregnant, but psychologically, can she be a mom? No. But if you think back in time, if a reproductive window opened at around age 18, well, she's reaching adulthood, and that's sort of the time when a woman might be ready to start thinking about having a baby. So yes, how do foods do this? I think they do it in a couple of ways. One is that we're simply eating more food, more calorie-dense foods like meat, dairy products, and oily things, and that may be causing us to grow up a little bit too fast. We learned a long time ago that foods affect growth all across the age spectrum. If a baby is breastfed, which is what Mother Nature was really pushing for a long time, babies grow up gradually. They reach menarche a little bit later, and they're going to live longer, healthier lives if they're following a healthy diet. When babies are not fed milk from the breast, but are fed formula, cow's milk formula, for example, they grow up faster, they gain weight faster, and their parents might think, oh, isn't that great? But you don't want your baby to grow up abnormally fast and reach menarche early and die early. You want to extend life. So the dropping age of puberty may relate both to the quantity of food, the number of calories that are coming in, but also the fact that we're eating foods. For example, dairy products I mentioned earlier, they have estrogens in them. And because we're eating a very low fiber, high fat diet, we have a bit of hormone haywire that is going on since childhood. So I advocate for exactly the same kind of diet that an adult wants to follow for any kid after the age of breastfeeding, after the age of weaning. That means vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, take your vitamin B12 and have it be a healthy kind of diet. Now, can you be low in protein? If you have any normal variety and beans and vegetables in your diet, and you're eating enough to maintain your weight, and if a child's growing normally, they're not going to become protein deficient. Every parent worries about this kind of thing, but the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has weighed in year after year after year after year saying vegan diets provide healthy amounts of protein. Now, nervous parents will sometimes say, well, let me pour a glass of soy milk for my child with extra protein in it, and you can, and that's fine. In fact, the soy is going to reduce their risk of breast cancer later on in life. That's good. But that added protein, they probably didn't really need it, but it's okay to do if you want to. So no, you're not going to risk a protein deficiency. That occurs really when a person's on an extremely deficient diet because of civil strife. The food trucks don't arrive anymore, and all you've got is some cassava to eat or something like that. You will see the kind of thing happening in very restricted geographic areas, but not for a person who's got a normal, healthy, varied diet.
Doctor, thank you. And we have up next, Elizabeth with a question. Elizabeth, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself, that would be great. There you go. Thank you.
Hello, what is it? Good afternoon where you are?
Yes, hi, Elizabeth. What's your question?
Yes, I've been taking thyroid medicine for about 20 years. And I just found out that my bone density is a little bit, has developed in the last year or so, and I'm having to take something else. Now, my question to you is, does thyroid medicine usually have an effect on bone density?
Is your bone density lower? Are you saying your bone density is low?
Yes, they're saying that I'm showing osteoporosis on my spine and my hip.
Okay, and do you mind me asking how old you are?
65.
Okay, first of all, it's a good thing that you're getting appropriate treatment. It's good that you're talking to your doctor and you're getting these things measured, but your thyroid affects everything. It affects every aspect of your body, and it can affect the health of your bones too. So you definitely want to make sure that you're in appropriate balance, and you definitely want to follow the kind of healthy plant-based diet that we discussed earlier. That's good for your thyroid, good for your bones too. And the rules for bone health are pretty simple, and I would make sure I follow these before I would go to some of the osteoporosis medications. But of course, be guided by what your personal physician has suggested. The basic steps, you do need calcium in your diet. You don't need cow's milk. Cows don't actually make calcium. Cows get it from grass. Hopefully you're not eating grass, but if you're eating your own green vegetables like broccoli and all the healthy, green vegetables, they have a huge amount of calcium that's highly absorbable. I'm talking about Brussels sprouts and kale and collards and those kinds of things. Number two, you need to be able to absorb that calcium into your bloodstream. How do you do that? You need vitamin D. Vitamin D normally comes from the sun on your skin, but modern people are indoors most of the time. And if they ever go out, they use a sunscreen that stops the vitamin D from being able to be made. So you might want a vitamin D supplement, and most doctors suggest about 2,000 international units of vitamin D per day. Your doctor might have a different number for you since you got osteoporosis. Some doctors push it up to about 5,000, but be guided by your doctor. Number three, lace up your sneakers and get some exercise. And it's good to get a combination of aerobic exercise, but also weight-bearing exercise. And walking and running is good for your spine. It's good for your hips. It does get them stressed a little bit. And whatever you can do for your upper body is good too. So those are just some really simple things. But none of the things I described take the place of making sure your endocrinologist has his or her eye on your thyroid level and make sure that those things are fine too. Anyway, thank you for that question.
Thank you so much. And we'll now move on to Sandy is up next. Sandy, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go. Excellent.
Yes. Hi, thank you for taking my call. I'm your biggest fan. I'm going to buy your book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
My question is coffee healthy to drink on a plant-based diet? And which plant-based milk is best for men, please?
Okay, coffee is fine. And I'm not pushing it. I personally I never really got a taste for it myself. But if you drink it, I can't find any real fault with it. In fact, some people have found that coffee actually might reduce the risk of Alzheimer's a little bit. Now, to get there, you probably have to have about 5 cups a day. but it does seem to have that effect, at least in the observational studies. The downsides of coffee are things you already know about. It will make you jittery. You will get addicted to the caffeine. Caffeine is addictive. And what that means is that tomorrow morning, you're going to be in withdrawal. And so that means you're always on a little bit of an emotional roller coaster that all addictive compounds cause. But you know already how that affects you. The biggest problem with coffee is what goes in it. Creamers, some of them are on the not so healthy side. So you want to get a vegan, non-dairy creamer with minimal saturated fat. What are the best non-dairy milks? Soy milk, I think, is a great one. It's a little different from the others in that it's got a better balance of protein to the natural sugars than others do. And soy milk, in the same way as it reduces the risk of breast cancer for women, it appears to reduce the risk of prostate cancer for men and doesn't have any untoward effects. So soy milk is probably a good one, but rice milk, almond milk, they're all great. I would avoid coconut milk. It's popular nowadays, but coconut and palm oils have a lot of saturated fat. I would steer clear of those.
Excellent, thank you. Up next, we have DF. DF, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, Dr. Barnard. I am a big fan of yours. I've been collecting your books, and thank you for everything you do for the planet, for humans, and for the animals as well. I have a couple of questions. I was surprised to hear that heme iron can actually exist in plants, because I think at least one plant-based burger out there claims that they extract heme iron from soy. I don't remember the name of that. It's like hemoglobin or something like that. I was surprised to hear that. And if that's so, do we have enough evidence to show that that kind of heme iron that exists in plants, it's okay for humans, unlike the heme iron that exists in meat? My second question is there any way through nutrition to increase brown adipose tissue versus white adipose tissue? Thank you very much in advance.
Okay, well, those are two great questions. What you're thinking about is the Impossible Burger. The Impossible Burger was launched for one purpose, and it's actually really good for this purpose. It is designed to convince heavy meat eaters that they could still get all that greasy taste without meat. And so what they did is they simulate the taste of the greasiest hamburger by taking plant-based proteins and throwing in a lot of grease into it, more than you should be having. And they add leg hemoglobin, leg as in legume, as in bean. And it's a genetically, if I understand correctly, it's a genetically engineered product that is supposed to give it the same taste that bloody tissues have, to put it kind of bluntly. And I think that the Impossible Burger does a good job of simulating meat. A lot of people will go to Burger King, and instead of the Whopper, they'll get the Impossible Whopper, and they think, gee, this is amazing. It's vegan, but it's very tasty. Fair enough. But it's a transition food, meaning that once you've gotten the transition away from meat and you realize you don't actually need meat, transition away from this product too, so that you're choosing foods that are lower, much lower in fat and don't have the coconut fats and things that are going to cause your cholesterol level to be higher than they really should be. Does that hemoglobin that's plant derived, does that really matter? No, probably not. I don't think it frankly matters with regard to taste, and it won't affect your health. The amounts are really, really small. With regard to brown fat and white fat, what you're going to see on a plant-based diet is that really both diminish. And I don't think you're going to see a lot of dramatic changes there one way or the other. That said, what we do see, what a lot of people are thinking about with these different kinds of fat is they're wondering if they affect metabolic rate in one way or another. And we do see that when people go on vegan diets, their after meal metabolism is boosted just a little bit. I don't think that's because of brown fat. I think it's really because there is less fat in their cells, in their muscle cells. And that in turn causes their mitochondria to do better. So that's probably the real secret there.
Dr. Great, thank you. And up next, we have Wendy L. Wendy, go ahead and unmute yourself, please. And we'll have you ask Dr. Barnard a question. Let's see, Wendy, if you're able to unmute yourself.
Oh, hi. Sorry about the delay.
Sure. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, Dr. Barnard. Heard your presentation several times over the years. They're just wonderful. I just have two questions. One is, I was recently diagnosed with pre-diabetes, though. But I think I probably went a little bit off my whole food plant-based during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's a part of me that is concerned about eating too many carbs. I mean, I'm making my lentil, split pea soups, with lots of vegetables. I know how to cook whole food plant-based, but a lot of these things do have carbs, the yams. So that's my first question. And the other second simple question would be, how often should one be monitoring B12 level?
Okay, great question. Carbohydrate is your natural fuel. Carbohydrate means starch. So the starch in rice or in beans or in a sweet potato. If you could look at that carbohydrate molecule under a powerful microscope, all it is glucose molecules joined together. And in your digestion, you have enzymes that have been waiting for that to arrive. And what they do is they clip those glucose molecules apart. They go into your bloodstream, and then insulin at the surface of the cell, as you remember from my lecture, it takes those glucose molecules and they go into your muscle cells. And they go into liver cells, and the glucose also goes up to your brain and it powers your brain. And all of those parts of your body are delighted to have that glucose. You know what? It's their favorite fuel. So starch isn't bad. Starch is a good thing. And glucose comes to us in starches, and it also comes to us in natural sugars, like the fruit sugars in apples and oranges and others. It's all a great thing. But what's gone wrong? What's gone wrong is that books have gotten on the market that say carbohydrate is the devil. And they're trying to push ketogenic fad diets. And so they say you shouldn't ever be having apples, and you shouldn't be having sweet potatoes, you shouldn't have oranges, you shouldn't have bananas, and they take all the fruit out of your diet. And if they take away all your fruit and all your noodles and all your starchy vegetables and all your beans and everything else that has carbohydrate in it, they've taken away about 60% of your diet. And as you lose weight, they say, isn't that impressive? Well, you could take out 60% of anything and you're going to lose weight with it. And it's not a really healthy way to go. But anyway, here's the point, is I think they've kind of poisoned our discussion. They've made people think that carbohydrates are bad for us. Carbohydrates are healthy for us. Now, carbohydrates can be bad in the sense that if you take grains of wheat, grind them into flour, and then mix them with a whole lot of butter and make them into cookies, that's not so good. Mostly because of all the butter and shortening that got put in there, but the carbohydrate itself is your healthy natural fuel. So if you're having sweet potatoes, root vegetables, grains, beans, frankly, as long as you're eating, you stop eating when you're full, those are the best foods for you. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans. You asked about vitamin B12. Most people never really do check their vitamin B12. And if you're not symptomatic and your routine blood tests all come back normal, talking about your hemoglobin and hematocrit, your doctor's probably not even going to bother testing it. If you don't supplement, go get tested. But you should be supplementing vitamin B12, really no matter what. If you haven't been, go get tested. And of course, if you have symptoms, your doctor will test you. But otherwise, most people really don't get tested really very often at all.
Excellent, Doctor. Thank you. And up next, we have Adele. Adele, if you go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. Wonderful to hear your talk. I have two questions. One is about the thyroid. Is hypothyroid hypothyroid or hyperthyroid related to Graves and Hashimoto only, or are there other causes?
Okay. Oh, yes, there are other causes. The most common cause of hypothyroidism, low thyroid, yes, is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. That's the condition I was describing, where your body has antibodies that are detectable in the blood, and they're stopping the thyroid gland from making thyroid hormone normally. And then the hyperthyroidism, that's Graves' disease. That's the most common hyperthyroid condition, or a very common one, I should say. But no, there are other causes of both. And so if you have thyroid symptoms, your doctor's number one job is to see, could there be something else going on here? Is there something structurally wrong, something growing in the thyroid, for example, that's interfering with that function? Or do I just not have enough iodine? It's a very straightforward kind of evaluation that every endocrinologist does pursue in trying to understand why a person is either low or high. And that's why it's really important to get a good medical evaluation if you got thyroid symptoms.
Okay. And the other was just a response, but you've mentioned coconut oil. I was that took me by surprise, because I was under the impression that coconut oil was okay because it had a different structure. I forget the terminology for the different structure,
Yeah.
but what I'm hearing from you is no, it's a saturated fat.
Yes, yeah, coconut oil, I would avoid it completely. You can put it on your skin, put it in your hair, wax your car with it. I would not ingest it at all. And the reason I say that is you will hear huge amounts of marketing. People saying coconut oil doesn't raise your cholesterol very much. They are wrong. It's not true. Researchers have put this to the test, and I am prepared to believe that coconut oil may not be quite as bad as butter, but it clearly does raise cholesterol levels. And so I would not go anywhere near it. They're heavily marketed. They're dumping it in everything. Palm oil too. I would steer clear of both of those kinds of fats.
Doctor, thank you. We have a few more. Elaine is up next. Elaine, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Barnard.
Hi.
I'd like to thank you for the informative lecture. I have just one question. I have been anemic for much of my adult life, and doctors assume it was the fibroids, which did cause heavy bleeding. So I had the fibroid embolization procedure, and although the bleeding has lessened, the anemia still persists. So my doctor thinks I might have a blood disorder that doesn't allow my body to absorb iron. So he has me on Ferrex 150, to take one a day, but do you recommend like healthier ways or options of getting enough iron in? Because I mean, yeah, that's just my question.
Okay. All right. First of all, thanks for being part of the program, and thank you for that good question. You're doing the right thing by talking to your doctor, because your doctor is right. First of all, to look at why are you having a low iron level. Normally, people have adequate iron stores. And if you're running low, your doctor is going to be thinking, okay, you're bleeding. Is it just the fibroids, or could you be bleeding in some other way? So your doctor's going to want, I'm sure your doctor has already talked to you about that. Do you need a colonoscopy? They will go through their mind to think through, could you be losing blood in some other way? Incidentally, fibroids are driven by estrogens too, in the same way as endometriosis and menstrual pain are. So this is another reason for a low-fat, completely plant-based diet, to bring down the estrogens that are driving fibroids. Now, if you're after the age of menopause, your fibroids are going to start regressing anyway, although it's a pretty slow process. But a low-fat vegan diet takes some of the heat off the fibroid growth, albeit very slowly, unfortunately. Your doctor's recommended an iron supplement for you. You're taking it. That's probably a good idea. Nonetheless, it's useful to remember that there are natural plant sources of iron too. You can discuss with your doctor, I'm eating lots of greens, I'm eating beans, and for extra credit, if you have vitamin C rich foods, citrus fruits, peppers, and others at the same meal as the iron containing food, the iron absorption is better. So you can put all that together, and that it may be that will help your iron metabolism as well. The other thing your doctor is thinking of is if you are exercising a huge amount, you didn't say whether you were or not, but that can sometimes suppress iron levels a little bit too. But it's good that you're talking to your doctor about these things and follow your doctor's advice, but those are some of the diet sides of it to bring into the discussion too.
Doctor, thank you. Next, we have Angela. Angela B, if you go ahead and unmute yourself, that would be great. Yep, there we go. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Barnard. I've been following you for a couple of years now. I have Hashimoto's and had a partial thyroidectomy, and I was taking synthetic thyroid hormones, but had a reaction. So I am on desiccated thyroid right now. So I'm just wondering, is there long-term effects by having an animal-based thyroid medicine versus the synthetic?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that you have to deal with this challenge. You might want to try the dietary approach that we've described if you haven't already. But my best guess is that it probably works for some people and not for others. And the answer to your question is, if you are low in thyroid and other things aren't working, you really do need to have supplementation. And if you can't have other forms, then taking the desiccated one does make sense. And long term, for many people, they don't really quite feel exactly as good as they did when their thyroid gland was working well. They very often find that the supplements aren't quite the same, but they are safe for long-term use and are an important thing to continue. So thank you for your question.
Thanks, doctor. We have up next now, John L. If you go ahead and unmute yourself, that would be great.
Thank you, doctor. Is nutritional yeast a good source of vitamin B12? And kind of going off one of the other questions, there's so many new vegan fast food-ish options at stores, supermarkets, etc. What should we be looking for to avoid eating junk food vegan?
Okay. Yes, nutritional yeast is a good source of B12. If it says B12 on the label, many of them are supplemented with B12. You'll see it on the label. But no, that doesn't mean you don't need a supplement, because usually the amount that's in a normal serving of nutritional yeast is not quite enough. So I would encourage you to, even if you have nutritional yeast, which, by the way, if people are listening to this saying, what the heck is nutritional yeast? It is a healthy powder that they sell at health food stores. And you have to fight your way through all the bodybuilders who are buying it because it's cholesterol-free protein. But the reason vegans use it is it tastes like cheese. You put it on your vegan pizza, mix it into the tomato sauce, and you'll think, gee, there's cheese on here. Or people mix it with noodles, and it's like mac and cheese, and it's a cool thing. So it does have B12, but probably not enough to obviate the need for supplementation. Regarding fast foods, I'm glad they're out there. They're making vegan eating a convenient thing. But look at the label when you buy a product and focus especially on the saturated fat content. It's always on the label. Saturated fat is the bad fat. And if there's more than a gram or two in there, it's going to cause your cholesterol level to go up and contribute to other problems too. If it is 0, that's good. And by the way, you know, I have to tell you, I don't use the word vegan junk food. The reason I say that is there are junk foods that happen to have no animal products. But you know who's eating the most junk food? It's not vegans. It's all those omnivores eating omnivorous junk food. So if they're eating candy and chips and all kinds of junk, if they become vegan, that's a good move. That's a great move. But when a person goes to a completely plant-based diet, that's not the end of their dietary exploration. That's the beginning of it. And so now we're thinking, all right, the animal products are gone. What are the healthiest choices for me now? And they're often the simplest choices. Fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and all the wonderful foods they turn into. And don't forget your B12 as well.
Excellent, doctor.
Sure.
Now we have Suzanne is up next. Suzanne, if you go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Barnard. I'm so glad I got to hear your lecture earlier. I had a question about symptomatic gallstones. If somebody has symptomatic gallstones and can find a physician who would actually do like the bile reduction, could a whole food plant-based diet low in fat stop them from reoccurring?
Gallstones are in most cases made of cholesterol, and cholesterol comes from animal products, and it's also made in your body by particularly when the diet is high either in animal products or coconut oil. The saturated fats cause cholesterol levels to rise. And if you look in the wastebasket outside the pathology office where the gallstones were thrown after they were examined, you're going to find it's cholesterol is what it is. So does a plant-based diet help? Yes, absolutely. For people who want to avoid getting gallstones or prevent their recurrence, you definitely want to go to a plant-based diet. Now, some people have a greater propensity for making them, and doctors will sometimes think about medication regimens and other ways to go as well. But no, a diet change is always job one.
Doctor, thank you. Up next, we have Susan. Susan, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself for the doctor.
Hello, Dr. Barnard. I'm a big fan of you and PCRM. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome. I'm hypothyroid like 25 years and vegan about 9 years. And now I'm suddenly realizing, oh my God, there's lactose in my synthroid for one thing. And then I just recently found out the endocrinologist said, well, there's something called tyrosine, but that has pig gelatin or whatever, that ingredient in it. So this is a whole new thing of how am I possibly going to get a vegan, a non-animal product pill? And I feel like that's what I want to do. I hear that I saw on a website that in England they might have something, but I'm not in England, In their formulary, they have something called Tiva that people there say is vegan. Do you know anything about this?
Well, now you're telling me something new. You're saying that the synthroid, it's probably as part of the capsule formulation, has some lactose in it, or else is a filler.
Yes, lactose monohydrate.
Yeah, okay. When you take any kind of medication, the medication is there, and then there's some kind of filler that they can that allows them to make it into a pill. And I was not aware of the lactose in the thyroid medication that you're describing, but I am going to dig into that and see if there's something I can learn about that further, and I'll share that with the organizers of this program. In addition, it's the kind of thing where doctors have to deal with this quite a lot, where you have a patient who may even be allergic to something. There are people who have a dairy allergy, for example. And so it's not an uncommon thing for a doctor to have to look at all the available medications in a particular class, in this case, thyroid supplementation, to find the ones that don't have those additives in them so that they can be safely given to patients. So let me dig into that. Thank you for sharing that information.
Great, thank you. Up next, we have DF is back with us. DF, go ahead and unmute yourself. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm back again. I have a very quick question. Is it correct that osteoporosis cannot be reversed once it sets in?
No, your bones are dynamic structures that the bone structure can increase or it can diminish. And when people have osteoporosis, it can change and it can improve. And it improves. Some doctors will use medications for it, but others use the other steps that I mentioned. Having plenty of calcium, and I mentioned greens and so forth as sources of calcium. Some people will say, go to the store and get some Tums. And what they mean is it's normal calcium carbonate, which if taken with a meal becomes part of the calcium dose. And then they'll have vitamin D along with, and they'll have exercise. And no, the bone integrity, the bone density can change over time, including in people who have been diagnosed with osteoporosis.
Excellent, thank you. Looks like just a couple of more. We've got Janine up next. Janine, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Barnard. Thank you for doing this.
Sure.
I have a sort of a quick two-part question. Firstly, I have been whole food, plant-based, I have to admit, with some junk vegan food for the last 7 years and have not lost any weight at all. And my second question is inflamed bursa for many, many years. Is there any particular foods or lifestyle changes that I could make that would improve tendinitis and inflamed bursa, particularly when it's very difficult to walk?
Okay. First of all, I'm sorry to hear that you're dealing with these issues. It sounds like you have some weight that you'd like to get rid of, and you've gotten away from animal products, and the weight still isn't coming off. When we have that situation in our clinic or in our research studies, we always do the following thing. We ask the individual to write down everything they've eaten for about 2 days. And then we're looking at the list for one thing, and that is oil sources of oil, whether it's cooking oils, salad oils, or nuts, nut butters, avocados. And if we find those, we take them out and then we see what happens over the next several days. And what almost invariably happens is that when we take those things out, weight starts to fall. And the reason for that is that oils and fats of any kind have 9 calories in every single gram. If you compare that to carbohydrate, whether it's starch or sugars, they only have 4 calories per gram. So chicken fat, beef fat, any kind of animal fat has 9 calories in every single gram. That's a lot. But vegetable oils, even though it's a healthier type of oil, also has 9 calories per gram. So if I go to the store and I get organic peanut butter, very natural, locally grown, it's still got 9 calories in every gram of the peanut oil that's in there. So those are the foods where if I'm trying to knock off the weight, I'm going to do a search and destroy for those. You asked about inflammation and specifically inflamed bursa. The short answer is we don't know what will work for you, but here's what we do, what people typically do when they have inflammation. Obviously, you'll want to see your caregiver and make sure that you're looking at any other possible contributor to it. But when people have joint pains and inflammation of other types, we often try to see if there are foods that might be contributing to it. What do I mean? I mentioned earlier that certain foods have an inflammatory processes that they can encourage. If I have a patient who's got rheumatoid arthritis, classic symptom where your joints are inflamed and tender and they hurt, if they avoid animal products completely, many of them get better. And the reason is, we believe, is often by avoiding the dairy proteins were often a contributor to inflammation. But here's the surprising thing. Some people need to go further. Let's say I'm vegan, but I'm sensitive to some other food. In the same way as a person can be allergic to strawberries. There's nothing wrong with a strawberry, but if I'm allergic, I can't have them. So let's say my joints are reacting to potatoes or citrus fruits or tomatoes or something like that. There's nothing wrong with any of those foods, but if you're sensitive, you just can't have them. So we do an elimination diet to track that down. And I've described this most recently in my book called The Cheese Trap. In the back of the book, you'll see how to do an elimination diet to see if foods are triggering your symptoms. And I've given the example of arthritis, but you could do it with any kind of inflammation, including the one you're describing. What you do is you avoid animal products completely. You look at the list of trigger foods in addition to the animal products and avoid them too. It's things like corn or tomatoes or citrus fruits or wheat. And when you take them out of the diet, you discover that your diet is kind of very limited, but you only do this for a couple of weeks and see if your symptoms improve. You're eating a lot of rice, cooked vegetables, cooked fruits like applesauce. And then as time goes on, if your joints or your symptoms get better, then you restore the foods you took out one at a time to see which one triggers the pain. And if you find that trigger, it is golden, because then you know you just avoid that food or those 2 or 3 foods, and your symptoms will be a lot reduced. So in addition to your medical care, I would give something like that a try if it were me. And very often you'll find a trigger, and it's very handy to identify.
Excellent, doctor. Thank you. And looks like we've got one last question. This is, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Marita. Please go ahead and unmute yourself for Dr. Barnard. Here we go. Oh, did we lose her? I think we may have lost her. Okay, I think that turned out. Oh no, she's back. Welcome. Okay, and we have somebody else also. So that said, Marita, again, if I've pronounced your name correctly, I hope, please go ahead and unmute yourself. Let's see if that works. Oh, she's having a problem. Says here you can't. Okay, I'm going to let you work on that. I'm going to go to Annie, and then we'll give you one more shot, Marita. Thank you. But you should be able to do it yourself. I'm not sure why that's not working. But let's go to Annie. Annie, if you would go ahead and unmute yourself, that would be great.
Hello.
Hi there, Annie. Thank you for being part of the program. What's your question?
Okay, so I have been a vegan for a numerous amount of years, but I have a lot of food allergies, like a ton of food allergies currently. And I've taken those foods out of my diet, but like I have so many food allergies, like there is only one bean that I can eat. I mean, baking soda, I mean, numerous things to where my diet is very restricted, and it's a little frustrating. And I don't know, like, how can I get rid of these allergies and introduce them back into my system? Or is it a gut problem? Because they checked my gut flora and said it was pretty good, but little exasperated with all the food allergies and how to get rid of them.
Yeah, let me ask you, what kinds of symptoms do the allergens cause?
It depends on the food. I have full-blown allergies to where I can't breathe and I'm gasping for air. And those are really bad, like with a peanut or baking soda, and I can't breathe, down to the point where some things that I have difficulty swallowing. So I know, like grapes, I'm allergic to grapes because I can't swallow them. And then other times I'll just start coughing really bad, but I can still, like black beans, I can almost swallow those. So it goes from a whole scale depending on how allergic I am.
Okay. Well, you're taking your symptoms seriously. That's really important, because if something is causing breathing problems or other really serious issues, you're going to have to avoid those foods. No, I don't have any magic answer for you. You're absolutely right that your gut will change. Your gut has bacteria in it. And if you have unhealthy gut bacteria, it can cause quite dramatic changes. And we've seen, for example, a person bit by a tick, walking through the woods, they're bitten by a tick, they start to get symptoms, they go to the doctor gives them doxycycline, which is the right thing to do, because it's going to knock out the germs that could hurt that person. But the doxycycline also knocked out their gut bacteria. And in the course of this, they now have unhealthy gut bacteria growing back, and they will discover that their gut is now leaky, and it's allowing all kinds of things to get into their blood. So let's say they eat a piece of bread. They never had a problem with gluten before. Now suddenly they're reacting to gluten. And so in other words, you can be not sensitive to something one day, and then a week later, you're now sensitive to it because your gut bacteria are changing. Your gut is now allowing larger portions, we believe, larger portions of the antigen into your bloodstream, and you're reacting to them. Whereas before, your gut wasn't so leaky and you're keeping them out. So this raises the question, what can I do to make my gut stronger so it doesn't let things into my blood, so I'm not reacting to so darn many things? I'm reacting to beans, I'm reacting to grains, and so forth. The short answer is, I don't think that science really knows yet. What we do know is that a healthy gut microbiome shores up the gut wall as much as it can, and that means the higher fiber foods that you can tolerate. If you can't tolerate beans, don't eat beans. But if there are certain ones you can tolerate, that's good. Grains, I'm guessing you're probably all right with white rice and brown rice. Brown rice is going to be a better one for you because that will bring you healthy fiber. And whichever grains you can tolerate, definitely eat them. If you're good with green leafy vegetables, you can't go wrong. Most of them are low allergen. In other words, not very many people react to them. And you're going to find that they give you the fiber that really nourishes a healthy gut microbiome. Fruits, many of them are okay. You're probably fine with most of them, but there are some that you may be reacting to. Avoid the ones that you can't eat. Eat plenty of the ones that you can. Go easy on oils. Oils are a surprise. Even the seemingly healthy oils can sometimes cause the gut to get a little leakier too. We want to avoid that. So a low oil diet is a really good way to keep your gut being more selective about what gets into the blood and what might cause a reaction. So that's not a perfect answer to your question, but that's about where science has brought us.
Thank you, doctor. And let's try Marita one more time. I'm sourcing it's going to work. If you'd go ahead and try to unmute yourself now.
Hi there, Marita.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can hear you fine. Thanks for your patience.
Okay, sorry about the delay there. Last year, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So immediately I gave up sugar, started juicing, and adopted a vegan diet, and it felt great. Then I was in a trial and I had a mastectomy. Then they wanted to do chemo, so I did 2 rounds and quit. They wanted to do 6. And then they wanted to do radiation, so I've done a few rounds of that, and I think I'm going to quit that too. One of my alternative practitioners has told me that where there's cancer, there's candida. So the candida diet he has me on is almost keto. And so there's a lot of fat and no starch, no fruit. And I'm wondering how I can fight candida and go back to the vegan diet, because I felt really good when I was on that.
Sure. Let me ask you, do you have symptoms of candidiasis?
Well, I have, from time to time, I have eczema, which I think might be related, and sometimes athlete's foot.
Okay, well, if these things are coming and going, to tell you, I'm concerned. First of all, I'm sorry that you had this diagnosis. It sounds like you've really been tackling it, and you've been taking advantage of treatments that may be helpful to you. I'm glad you're talking with your healthcare provider about it. However, the role of diet is an important one. And researchers have looked at various diets and their relationship with cancer survival. And although the evidence base could be bigger, we already know that diets that are rich in vegetables and fruits, along with physical exercise, do seem to help improve cancer survival. Diets that are low in fat seem to be associated with better survival too. And if you have been put on a diet that's fatty and that's neglecting some of the vegetables and fruits, that would make me nervous. And so I would be hard pressed to use that as a fundamental part of your treatment. So if it were me, I would have make sure that you're consulting with your caregiver and making sure that you're on the healthiest diet that you can. Many practitioners nowadays are talking with breast cancer patients about vegan, very low oil, and making sure that soy is part of your diet, assuming you tolerate it, because soy is associated with better survival as well. Anyway, I'm sorry you're dealing with these challenges, but good luck. I hope you get the good information you need from your own practitioner as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, doctor. We have just a few minutes left. We do have Allison up next. Allison, if you'd go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hi there, Allison.
Hi, thank you, doctor. I have a quick question. I've had gut problems for years and years and years, and I've been to many people, and I've gotten the answer that it's a spastic colon. I don't know, I just got COVID, and it worked really good for the time I've had COVID, but and when I go to the dentist and get frightened or any nervous thing, then I have no problem. But other than that, it's just, I've tried, I do eat plant-based. I read this new doctor who was on yesterday, I forget his name, Will something. And he was saying that you shouldn't go on a plant-based diet if you have a problem with your colon. And, you know, I've just been on this merry-go-round a long time, but my question is I don't know if you're familiar with Grover's disease. It's like a skin condition that you kind of get hives, and it's really uncomfortable. And I was wondering, do you think that's connected to the gut and the leaky gut and all of that kind of thing?
Leaky gut can occur, but let's go back a little bit. There isn't anybody for whom a plant-based diet is not the treatment of choice. Or let me put it this way: there isn't anybody for whom a plant-based diet is a bad idea. Everybody should be following.
I love it. I do.
Yeah, good. Everybody should be following a plant-based diet, and particularly for people with spastic colon is a term that's used by different people in different ways. But for some people, they mean that, well, sometimes you're kind of constipated, and other times the opposite occurs, and sometimes you'll have pain and bloating and that kind of stuff. And for most people, what really helps is to emphasize healthy grains like brown rice. Beans in kind of moderate quantities, always really well cooked. Cooked green vegetables, those kinds of things. Minimizing oils. Oils are kind of tricky on the digestive tract. You wouldn't think they'd have any effect, but oils are, when you eat a greasy diet, It's a little bit like taking your intestinal tract, and instead of having the normal motions of your intestinal tract where all the contents are moving slowly downstream, it's kind of like taking your intestinal tract and squeezing it with hands in both at the same time so that things are going back and forth and not moving the way they want to move. So we really get the grease out of the diet, healthy grains, beans, vegetables, and things tend to get better. What does that do? In addition to improving the gut motility, it also helps shore up that leaky gut so that things that can cause reactions are less likely to pass from the gut interior into the bloodstream. So give it a try and see if it doesn't help.
Doctor, thank you. We are really due to wrap up in about 2 minutes, but we had 2 people waiting. Do you have an extra couple of minutes or are you tight on time?
I've got a hard stop at 6 o'clock, but if we're not able to talk the calls, take the questions now, you can send them to me and I'm glad to give you a prompt response.
That sounds great. Why don't we wrap it here because we're at 5:59. So thank you, Dr. Barnard. This has just been remarkable and we are very grateful to you. You've been very gracious with all of this Q&A as well as an amazing presentation. So thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for joining us today. It's been a privilege to have you. We'll let you go now. I know you've got your hard stop and thank you again.
Well, thanks to you. Thanks to all the participants.